I got all the paperwork in, and then the waiting began. It took a lot longer than I thought. You get everything in, and then you wait a year to a year and a half till they actually assign you a baby. And it's so crazy. You know, you spent all this time talking to strangers about why you want a baby and how you deserve a baby, and here's proof of how you can take care of a baby. And then you end up waiting so long that you practically forget about it. And about a year later, someone will say, hey, about time to get that baby. And you'll think, oh my God, I'm gonna have a baby. Well, the time came when I figured I'd go get her, so I cleared my work schedule for about 3 months, and then everything got postponed. So I figured since I already had the time free, I would go to China and travel around and see this country where she'd be from. So I spent a couple of months in China and then a few weeks in Tibet. And you know, in Tibet, if you aren't gawking at the spectacular scenery, you're gawking inside the spectacular monasteries. And in each monastery, they have the Buddha on the altar, and then they have the goddess Tara by his side. And Tara's got the greatest story, which is the Buddha cried a tear for all the suffering of mankind, and then the Buddha's tear fell into a lotus flower, and out of the lotus flower sprang Tara, and she's the goddess of compassion. Well, I was in Shigatse, Tibet, and the guide was saying, here is the Buddha, and of course here is Tara. And I thought, wow, you know, Tara is an Irish name too. There's the Hills of Tara and Saint Tara. And as I turned this corner, amidst all these prostrating Tibetans and all this beautiful candlelight, it hit me. She'll be Tara. She'll be Tara Sweeney. Well, I got back from China, and I think the gods of romance must have smiled on me a little bit because I met this fantastic guy who all called Joe number 12. And we hit it off right away, and he thought it was just fantastic that I was adopting, and it was all exciting and ramped up, and I kept thinking things like, this is my last chance to have spontaneous sex anywhere in the house. Also, I kept thinking to myself, isn't this just the way? Just when you give up on a man being the key to it all, that's when it all naturally falls together. I could already hear myself in the future telling people our story with self-assured knowing wisdom. Oh, I loved our tale. Anyway, one day, I came home and I had all these messages on my answering machine. It was one of those things where you don't know if you should stop listening to the messages and make a phone call or keep listening to the messages to find out what the next hysterical chapter in the story was. But basically the messages went like this. Hello, Miss Sweeney. This is so-and-so from U.S. Asian Affairs. Today is day we assign baby to you. But Chinese government become aware that many single person adopting from China are gay. Chinese no like gay. So they have new policy. If you single, you must write letters saying you know gay. It has to be co-signed by a person who know you for more than 10 years. It has to be notarized and faxed today to the Guangzhou Children Orphanage at blah, 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 blah. And I was like, what? And then the next message was, okay, Miss Sweeney, we waiting for more than 1 hour to get letter from you saying you know gay. We no assign baby to you unless we get letter. And I was listening to these messages thinking, oh, the Chinese, they're so homophobic. They're really just insanely homophobic. As part of my big trip to China, I did this big bike ride in China, all the way from Guangzhou to Guilin. It was this big 14-day bike ride, 10 American couples, and me. And one of the couples was this lesbian couple, and the Chinese biking guides could not get over the fact that these two women were a couple. And every day when I'd be riding my bike, one of the Chinese biking guides would pedal up next to me and say, I no understand that couple. Who the man? Who the man? I would say, there is no man. It's two women. They fell in love with each other. There's no man. And the next day it would be the exact same thing. They'd pedal up next to me and say, who the man? Well, the thing that turned out to be so funny about this particular couple, especially as I got to know them over this 14-day trip, was that they, way more than any of the other heterosexual couples on the trip, were the most stereotypically sexually delineated. One of them was very masculine and one of them was very feminine. So that finally, by the last day of the trip, when the biking guide pedaled up next to me, I said, well, obviously, she's the man. What's the problem? I keep thinking that the Chinese should really rethink their attitudes towards homosexuality, especially in the coming years as 80% of their youth population is male reaching puberty. Anyway, The last message I got was, okay, Miss Sweeney, we wait all day to get letter from you saying you no gay, and we tired. But finally, Norman, who was my adoption facilitator from the States, convinced the officials that since you've been married before, you probably no gay. So finally, at the end of the day, they just went ahead and assigned you somebody. And I thought, oh, what do you mean you just went ahead and assigned me somebody? Like, oh, just give her that cross-eyed, drooly baby in the corner. Not that I wouldn't love that baby. But is it? I got a date to travel. And Joe number 12 announced that he wanted to come with me. I was tempted to let him come because things were going so well between us, but I had the wherewithal to say no. I guess I just figured that, you know, these pictures of us, of me meeting my daughter for the first time, are going to be so important to us. They're just going to be like iconography to us. And I guess I just don't want to have to worry about my daughter being a teenager in her room, showing her friends these pictures, saying, there's me meeting my mom. Oh, there's some guy my mom was dating at the time. So I told him no, and I went with 2 lifelong friends.